I have had players look me dead in the eyes and tell me playing a tutor in my deck is bad and wrong because EDH is the inconsistency format. And then they proceed to show me a deck full of redundant pieces designed to synergize around one central commander which you have access to every single game, all of the time, even if it's exiled, destroyed, or shuffled into your deck. A lot of times, players like to call EDH the inconsistency format, because it's singleton and whatnot. But I disagree. Even without any tutors, you should be able to make a deck which is able to consistently do whatever you want. I think consistency is a really important part of EDH if you want to have fun and correctly evaluate your deck's power level. In this video, I want to talk about inconsistency in Commander, how to avoid it, and where you might want some inconsistency. By the way, I also know your decks are inconsistent, and I'll tell you how I know that after this ad read. This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. If you want to buy any of the cards I talk about today or upgrade your deck a little bit after watching this video, consider using my code TTM at checkout. Plus, as long as supplies last, you'll get one of these cool Trinket tokens. They're cool, they're little treasures. Anyway, thanks to Cool Stuff Inc. for sponsoring the video. Recently on my socials and Patreon Discord server, link below, I asked players about house rules. Now, there were some fun ones like a silly hat for the monarchy, some cool ones like Blood Moon, Winter Moon, and Ruination were allowed at lower bracket games, and some wacky ones like you can cast planeswalkers that are in your opening hand for free, which was promptly abused and apparently removed as a house rule. Some of y'all have some wild house rules, but one of the most important ones I saw was about mulligans. Extra mulligans, unlimited mulligans, free mulligans if you have a 0-land hand. People love to warp the rules around their inconsistent decks, rather than let the rules inform how their decks should be built. But I think the reason people do this is they feel EDH is inherently inconsistent. That's just how things are. You got a mulligan extra. Sometimes your deck works, sometimes it does nothing. Initially, when you look at the format, you might actually agree with this. Of course EDH is inconsistent, right? You only get one copy of every card, plus with 100 cards, your odds of drawing any one individual card is pretty low, meaning you probably gotta mulligan those extra times to find something your deck needs, whether it's lands or a specific effect. But there are a lot more factors that contribute to EDH being a consistent format. For starters, your commander. This is a card you always have access to. If you play Jetmir, then you now have a 4-mana token payoff at all times. You can 100% know that you will have that card when needed. And that's just one tiny example. You can have commanders that draw cards, remove things, ramp you, and much more. Having card draw in the command zone alone can make a deck feel way more consistent since you just see a lot more cards on average. Also, Commander has a massive card pool. While it is true you can only run one copy of Birds of Paradise, you also have access to every 1-mana dork ever printed. And if you jam all of those in one deck, you can consistently cast your 3-mana commander on turn 2. Do you want equipment to power up your Voltron commander? Well, you have access to basically every single one ever printed. With how big the card pool is, you should be able to find at least 12 of whatever effect you need. And if we do a bit of calculating, it means you should find one by turn 4 very often, and even more so if you play any card draw. Also, if you're looking for one specific card in the 99, like a Sunforger, which is a one-of-one effect that you really don't have access to multiple copies of, then this is where you would want to turn to tutors so you can search up your Sunforger consistently. EDH is also really slow, meaning when compared to other formats, which mostly need to play the strongest, most efficient version of an effect, casual players have the luxury of being able to add the second or third best options for an effect and still make it work. Now let's talk about Manabases. Manabases are also really consistent in EDH because we have access to every duel ever printed. A lot of those get reprinted into standard and then tank in price as soon as they leave. So you can buy up a whole cycle for pretty cheap. Between Pain Lands, Fast Lands, Tango Lands, Check Lands, Filter Lands, Snarls, or even Shocks if you want to splurge a little bit, You got a lot of options, especially in casual EDH where you can afford some of these slower lands that enter tapped. Making a functioning 2 or 3 color mana base consistent is fairly cheap. And that's kind of it. I mean, not to trivialize this whole video and everything, but if you want your deck to be consistent in Commander, make use of the massive card pool and play the second and third best option for a card. Just fill your deck with the things your deck wants to do. Break it down. You want X, Y, and Z, play a lot of X, Y, and Z. Put some card draw in between there, and bada bing, bada boom, you got a consistent Commander deck. But is consistency something you want? Is it boring if your deck does the same thing every time? Well, the answer is yes and no. It depends on where the consistency is. And I guess personal preference, maybe you want the deck to do the same thing every time. I don't know, that's up to you. But I feel a lot of casual players conflate doing their thing with winning, and thus consistency with winning. I'll talk more about winning in just a moment, but there are certain things I really think should not be inconsistent. One is your mana base. If your deck loses because you didn't have enough lands or didn't hit your colors, that isn't fun or interesting gameplay. It just means sometimes you do literally nothing, and sometimes you get to play the game. Additionally, sometimes players' decks are inconsistent in their power levels. They have certain cards that massively increase the strength of their deck, but because they're not playing tutors or card draw, it doesn't happen consistently. Like if you have a Soul Ring and a Smothering Tithe in your deck, some games you will go turn 2 Smothering Tithe, destroy the table. But if the rest of your deck is a complete mess that doesn't function without a billion extra treasures, then your deck's power level is going to feel really inconsistent. Or if you play something like Demonic Consultation, Thassa's Oracle without any tutors. It means your deck can win in a really difficult to interact with manner on turn 3, sometimes randomly. I think inconsistency in power is not a good thing to have, because it really messes with the dynamic of casual EDH. Like, how can you say, yeah, my deck is bracket 3, except the times where it just draws into a CEDH tier play pattern? Inconsistency can mess up casual games big time. I hate it when players get mana screwed or draw the wrong half of their deck. It leads to unfun games where my opponent is just not doing anything. When evaluating what your deck does on average, I suppose if your deck either does high power stuff or nothing, it averages to a mid power deck, but in practice, it doesn't really feel like that. And as Commander players, we have a lot of tools to help us beat inconsistency. You can go to Scryfall. Simply pull up a card you want more copies of, throw its text into the search box, and then boom, we can find more cards that do similar things. Or put the card in EDH rack, and you can easily find other cards people play with it that probably do similar things. But what if you want each game to feel different and not end the same way? Well, I feel the same. The reason I'm scrapping my McCready deck is because it's too consistent in the win condition. Every win is basically the same. Play dude, give it a life-having effect, make it unblockable. Done. Yet my Tawanos deck I've had for years now because it wins in so many different ways. It's just a really fun deck to play. But looking at the two lists, I would argue Tawanos is actually way more consistent than McCready. The main reason I like the Tawanos list more is because of how the deck does its thing. You see, McCready's theme and the special thing it's trying to do is cut the life of players in half with unblockable dudes. And McCready's win condition is cutting players' life totals in half with unblockable dudes. So by making my McCready deck consistent, the wins feel the same way because the thing it does is also the win condition. But let's say I cut some tutors or some of the life-having effects and make it less consistent. Wouldn't that just fix the problem? Well, no, because it means there are games where my deck does nothing and spins its wheels more. And the games I manage to cobble together a win would still end up being the same. There's simply nothing else the deck does. Now compare this to my Tawanos list, where the deck's thing is that I want to play Salvaging Station and loop baubles around. This is the engine of the deck, but that engine doesn't win me the game. The wins come from the Millennium Calendar, copying big artifact creatures, or using my commander to copy high impact abilities. All of these synergize with the game plan of Station plus Baubles, but even if every single win attempt I do gets thwarted, I can still do my thing. And this deck is very consistent at doing its thing, yet manages to make each game feel fun and different. Consistency is not at odds with fun games of Commander. You can make a deck very, very consistent without making each game end the same way. And to do that, you just gotta separate out your deck's thing from its Wincon. And you can go even further by making your Wincons less definitive. Massive overrun effects, combos, or any other very high damaging effect usually end the game in one go. So when you compare that to a Wincon that is slower and might take longer to end the game, the faster, more definitive Wincon is going to happen more often, meaning your games will end the same way more often. Instead, if you have many varied, less definitive Wincons that are not tied to your deck doing its thing, you're going to end up with games that feel very diverse. So think chip damage, or maybe a very easy to disrupt combo like the Millennium Calendar, which requires a full turn cycle before it does anything. Putting it all together, I really think you should focus on making your lists a bit more consistent, at least in its core functions. Your mana base, your card draw, whatever that special thing your deck does. You want these things to operate correctly every game. Also, making the power level of your deck more consistent can help balance your casual EDH games. Generally, just making sure your deck operates at a good baseline consistently is a really good way to have more fun in more Commander games. And isn't that the goal of casual EDH? Thank you so very much for watching. Special thanks to my tier 3 patrons whose names you see here. If you want to get into the Patreon Discord server or check out any of the other cool perks, link is in the description below.